to more Sewing with Michele. On today's episode, I've got some pressing issues I want to discuss. The first is to steam or not to steam. That actually is the question. And are you an open or closed when it comes to your seams? And are you a Star Wars quilter? Do you press to the dark side? And what is warp and weft? All of these things I'm going to discuss today, as well as I've got this amazing, innovative iron to show you. You're going to not want to miss all the things this iron does. It really is a game changer. So let's get going on this episode of More Sewing with Michele. Hit that intro music. So let's get talking about this Oliso Iron. Now this is a smart iron. It's like taking your old rotary phone and upgrading to, a cell phone. The features on this are incredible. So first off, I can't wait to show you the one amazing thing to get going, but that's going to require a close-up. So this is the iron here. Now this iron is made to stay flat, and I'm going to show you that in a video shortly. But let me show you some of the other features about it. The cord has a 360 swivel, so you're never going to get kinked up and have your irons wiring here get bent or distorted or break. And I've had that happen. I was ironing with one of my favorite quilting irons, and over time from using it, the wires inside got a short, and as I'm using it, there were sparks coming out. So that will not happen with this because we have this wonderful swivel on the cord there. Now let me talk about the cord. How many times have you gone to go sewing or in your room where you want to set up your ironing board and the cord's not long enough? This has got 12 feet of cord. So you can plug it in and be able to have it run in a long distance. So no need for an extension cord for this. I love it. Not only do we have all these wonderful colors that we have available, but this is our purple. You will see that we have the fabric selection guide here, so you can pick your fabrics. And guess what? This is the steam preference toggle here. So not only does this iron steam horizontal and vertical, but it will also spray. So you have multiple options for when you need to give your fabric a little bit of control because it's misbehaving. So we have the steam selector, and then we also have the spray. So we have a spray that comes out the front, and then we have steam, and it will steam horizontal and vertical. And then you have different features with that as well. So really, really cool. Now when you enter here, you open up this area, and then you open that up, and this is how you will fill the water. It comes with one of the gauges there. And I love that it's got this wonderful bay, so to speak, as far as to fill your iron, so you're not going to spill and make a mess. That's pretty cool. And on the side here, you will see it has the max, so you're never going to overwater it. Now, this iron also will not drip. Let me replace that one more time. I'm going to say it again. This iron won't drip. Once you get everything in there and everything's securely closed, there'll be no drips. And that's amazing too. It comes with a 3-year warranty. And the sole or the foot of the iron is pretty amazing too. It is a diamond ceramic flow foot plate. And also look at the tip here. It's got a detailed tip here to where you can get into those corners or cracks and crevices. I like to use it to help separate when I'm doing an open seam. That will help to separate it. And what else? So that's the detailer tip. It has an anti-scale feature, an anti-tip design, so it's made to where it won't fall over. It has 1800 watts, and it heats up super fast. Another great thing that I love about it is it has 30 minutes that this iron will stay on before it shuts off. And let me talk real quick about that. I have other irons, and actually, one of my irons that I have down in my studio downstairs, if that iron is not in use, it will shut down. But it shuts down sometimes in the most inconvenient times. I'll be making blocks, and sometimes if you're doing a pretty detailed blocks, it takes some time sometimes to create the next one, and that iron will shut down in between. So then I have to put it down, I have to let it reheat up so that I can go again. This one will stay hot for 30 minutes. Now, if it goes to 31 minutes and you haven't touched your iron, it will then do the safety precaution and shut down. But that's pretty cool. 30 minutes. I love that because sometimes, you're busy sewing something really detailed, and by the time you get back there, it's kind of a bummer that your iron has shut off. But don't get me wrong, I love that feature that it does have the ability to shut off, save energy, and make it less of a hazard. Another thing that this iron, this Oliso Smart Iron has, if it was to, for some reason, fall over, it will only stay on for 30 seconds, which is awesome. So if something like, we live here in California, if there's a big earthquake and it gets knocked off your table, falls to the floor, and if it's plugged in, it will only stay on for 30 seconds. So that will protect your home for potential scorches on your carpet as well as fire dangers. So those are some of the the techniques for it. You will see here on the front here, it has a button. This one here is for the spray. This is for the steam. And then we also have, like I said, the toggle here so you can decide exactly what you want. Now, you'll see that this mark here, this will give you kind of an on-off so you can see the light on it. And then I haven't gone over the most amazing feature yet, but I will in just a second. This has a sensory handle here, and I'll explain why shortly, but it has that so that the handle. Now, one of the reasons why this iron is such an amazing smart iron is because it's almost like it has hydraulics. Now, let me get to the video and I'll show you that next. So let's get going to one of the reasons why this smart iron is so amazing. So I have mine set up on a light switch here, which turns it off and on. Let me get it going. So you can see, I'm going to hold it up to the close-up here. You'll see that it's red. And did you see that? Did you see what it just did? So as I touch the handle, it drops. Touch the handle, drops. Handle, drops. So it's unlike a hydraulic system. It's got a mechanical mechanism to this iron to where it's supposed to be stored flat the way you see it right here on the video. And as I touch it, you will drop and then you can sew. Super fun, super easy. Now it does take just a little bit of time to get used to it because I can't tell you how often I go back and I go to get done with it and then I store it this way and it will store upright, but then you'll see the feet come back out. So it's made to store flat and it will always protect your ironing surface because it will pop back up. So when you're ready to sew, you simply go sew. When you're done, voila, it's so cool. You're going to find that ironing is going to be so much fun. It's going to be a pleasure because it's a new tool and you can simply play around with it. So much fun. Now let me show you real quick how to get the water in here. So you're going to want to turn the iron off. And I'm going to turn this off just to be safe. And then you're going to open the door here. And you can see, when I show you up close, it's got like this nice bay to get it in. So it makes it easy and convenient. And then you can simply put your water in without any problems as far as getting it in the iron. And then simply shut it down and you're good to go. So I'll turn it around this way so you can see it from this side. Okay, So as promised, let me show you. I can't get enough of touching it. So in order to squirt, you can do that. Squirt stuff out, but I want to show you just how much fun the steam is too. Look at that. Let me do it towards the camera. You can see it's got a forceful steaming. So your steaming is going to be the best that you've ever had with this wonderful Oliso Iron. And once again, let me do the steam one more time. Woohoo! Talk about steaming. Isn't that awesome? So I wanted to go over a little bit of history about ironing. Now, the Chinese were the first known to use some sort of iron. It was about 1,000 years ago, and they basically took a metal pan and they filled it with hot coals, and they used that to do their ironing. So those were the first known type of ironings that we had. Now, in the Middle Ages, blacksmiths started to create an iron that weighed about 5 to 9 pounds. So can you imagine having to use that to press your sheets or whatever they were pressing back then? But 5 to 9 pounds, that would really, do your wrists in over time. Now, sad irons were used and were made of metal, and then eventually they were heated, and that's what they were called. They were called sad irons. Now, flat irons came into fashion, and they were lighter, and they had the wood handle. So no longer were you going to have burnt fingers or your hands get scorched from ironing from long periods of time. Before that, they would use cotton or linens to wrap around that metal, but the wood really saved them over time. Now, Mrs. Potts invented that in 1871. So thank goodness for Mrs. Potts. The French made the first electric iron in 1880. And the first ironing boards were actually on a wood table, and they just used a blanket on top, and that's what they ironed on. So once again, if your table wasn't that clean, it was just a mess. But Sarah Boone, yay for Sarah Boone. She invented the first modern ironing board, and it was tapered at the ends like we have now, so you could get into your sleeves or get your cuffs done or your collars. She really revolutionized that. And she also was the first African American woman to receive a patent in the United States. So, Sarah Boone, way to go. Good job. And that's a little bit of the history of ironing. Now, I know that you have been thinking real quick, and I know that this iron is something that you are absolutely going to treasure. So in order to pick it up, all you need to do is go to moors-so.com, or you can click on the link in the description of this video that'll take you to our landing page where you will find the Oliso Iron on the episode. So go to moors-so.com and pick up your smart iron today. Okay, so let's talk about my pressing issues. We know that I probably have many, but we don't have enough time and a couch to go over all of them. But I wanted to talk about my pressing issues that have to do with ironing. And the first that I want to talk about is warp and weft. Now, warp and weft are pretty important when they come to anyone that's sewing, and that's what we're doing here. We're taking a textile and sewing them together. And warp and weft have a lot to do with when your fabrics get out of alignment. Now, in order to remember what's warp and what's weft, Mary Fawns had come up with a little trick, and I thought it was pretty special, so I'm going to share it with you. Warp is the fabric direction from top to bottom, so this would be the warp. Now, weft is the fabric weave from right to weft. Isn't that cute? I love it. So we have warp and we have weft. Now, like I said, it's pretty important. And if you use steam or water, you have the potential of making your fabric get out of alignment. So this is just a piece of fabric that I have. and I've cut it on the straight of the grain. Now, the straight of the grain means that I'm in alignment with my warp and weft. Now, this particular fabric here, when they printed it, it was slightly off skew, and you're going to find that all the time in quilting fabric, where when it's going through the printing process, sometimes it's not in perfect plumbness, so to speak. But the warp and weft will always be correct. Now, if you use a lot of steam, or if you, when you're ironing, you get a little bit aggressive, you have the potential of disturbing the warp and weft and making them get wonky to where those fibers are not straight anymore. And that's what happened to this piece. Same fabric, you can see that it was cut from there. So there's no difference in it. But what I did was I used steam when I pressed it. And you can see that I have some concaveness, and the warp and the weft are not happy anymore. They are not cohesive, so to speak. So that's why it's important for me to share with you that sometimes when you use steam, or you use a lot of water or a lot of spray, it could be best press, it doesn't matter what it is. Sometimes when you are aggressive when you're ironing, you will disturb the warp and weft. And what that does is it will mean that your quilt blocks will not be precise. So if I was to line up these two pieces now, you can see that the corners are in alignment, but I have this big convex area. So when you sew them together, depending upon who you are, some people may line up that piece to the side, and that means your block's going to be wonky. So be very careful, my friends, when you use steam or the way you iron. The correct way to iron, or press, we should say, is to toe straight up and down. And that's one of the reasons why this iron, the Oliso, is so perfect, because it allows you to just simply put it on and it will press and steam. Now, just to be honest, and I've shared this before, I do not like using steam or water of any kind on my quilt blocks. Now, if I want to correct the fabric, if it comes in and it's a little wrinkly, what I will do is I will use the Best Press product that I've shared with you before. Love this stuff. And I will spritz the fabric, and then I will dry iron it. And that way, before I cut my fabric and before I sew my pieces together, the fabric is already behaving, and I've gotten the wrinkles out. Now, if you get done and you have a quilt block, we'll say, let me put this one in here, and say I wanted to press this. Now, this one's already pressed, so you can see that there's no issues. But if I needed to press it right after I got done, and if I use steam, that has the potential once again to disturb my warp and weft. We don't want that. And the more I say warp and weft, I know I'm going to start sounding like I'm a dog out there barking in the backyard. But you need to protect your warp and weft at all costs. So there's a little bit of information for you about steaming. Now, I love to steam my clothes, and needless to say, that's perfect. But for fabrics, once again, let me bring my little sample in here. You want to protect it. So do not use steam aggressively. And always remember, even when you're ironing, you don't want to do a twist. You're not doing, the chubby checker dance, the twist out there on your fabrics. You really just want to press up and down. Now let's go over open or closed seams, and I've got two fabrics here to demo with too. So if you are not familiar with what that means, let me put both of these on the screen here. So this is a closed seam here, and this one's open. So this one here, both of them are closed, and also they are going to the dark side. So there's also some Star Wars quilting here too, where this one's open. Now, when I started quilting, I was sewing clothes before, and sewing clothes, basically everything I'd seen, you want to open your seams. So that's why I started with lots of open seams. But let me give you a little bit of information. A closed seam is more stronger than an open seam. A closed seam, it basically entraps these fibers with 2 layers of fabric on top. So it's going to be a stronger seam. So for the most part, you want to have your seams closed and not open. Now there's always exceptions to the rule. Now let me show you this one here, this quilt block, and this will explain the exceptions to the rule. So this block here is a star, pinwheels. So we've got lots of little things that are going to connect right in the center there. And with that, it creates lots of bulk. So this is the rule of thumb. This is basically how I do things. I will have a closed seam when it's just 2 pieces of fabrics going together. Now, when I have multiple fabrics coming together at the same spot, like for here in the center, if I was to have it all be closed, what you would find is that that center would have a huge bump on it. And then when you would do your quilting or long arming, it's going to be a little bit problematic to go over it. So you want to minimize the bulk. And what I mean by that is, that's when I open up these seams, so that when I get to the center now, I don't have a rocking area and everything is kind of smooth. It evenly distributes the bulk of the fabric. So most of my blocks, if you look at the back of them, you will see they will have closed, but they will also have open when it's in areas where there's going to be a lot of seams come together. And it's as simple as that. You want the front of your quilt block to look just as amazing as the back. And I can push here, and yeah, it's a little bit of thick, but it's not like it would be if I had everything closed. And I have that other block that I can show you. That's the same thing. There's the front. Now in this one, you can see I have closed on all the flying geese, and then all the intersections, I have them open. So there you go. You have options always closed and open. Now we're going to talk about Star Wars quilting and pressing to the dark side. Basically on that, now this one with the center area, since they're open, that wouldn't be correct. But pressing to the dark side would be, if you have a white fabric and a blue fabric, you typically want to press your seams closed to the dark side. And the reason being is, if you were to have this open and if you have white fabric, you're going to see that white fabric shadow in the back. So that's why you always want to be like Darth Vader and press your seams to the dark side. And that way you will not have the showing through on the front on light fabrics where you can see that seam. And it's just a little thing that we do. It makes things look better from the front side. And believe you me, the reason we sew all of these fabrics together is so that the front of the quilt looks amazing. I always say, who cares what the back looks like? It's the front that counts. So that is Star Wars quilting. Another little bit of information you didn't know, or maybe you did. And the last thing is to steam or not to steam. And I kind of went over that. I tend to not steam any of my quilting at all because I do not want my warp and my weft to get out of alignment. So once again, you can see how it's concave. And that's a little bit of information you need to know. Always remember, open and closed seams, both of them are required. It all depends upon the particular block that we're sewing. So what do you think? I know you're going to want to get one of these ultra smart Oliso irons. They really are going to change the way you press. And speaking of which, we covered all my pressing issues. You now know what warp and weft is. You also know that it's good sometimes to be like Darth Vader and press to the dark side. And open and close seams. The truth is, both of them are going to make your quilting perfect in the end. And to steam or not to steam, that's still a personal preference. I personally don't like to use it, except for on my clothing and also before when I'm trying to minimize wrinkles in my fabric. But as far as when I'm actually piecing and on a finished block, I always choose not to steam. And when I do need to use a little bit of assistance, always remember to use best press. So there you have it on this episode of More Sewing with Michele. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today as much as I have, and I look forward to seeing you on my next episode. Until then, bye-bye!